Newsfirst Newsline with Faraz Shaukatali.
And top of the morning to you. This is Newsline, live from the Newsfirst studios in Dawson Street in Colombo. And we have this morning as our guest the former Deputy Governor of the Central Bank of Sri Lanka, Mr. Vijayawardena. Good morning and welcome to Newsline.
Thank you very much. Yes.
Mr. Vijayawardena, there is all sorts of concerns going on. People are saying that the former governor wasn't given a new contract, and the president refused to appoint him. So the story goes. However, there is concern that that some people who were transferred out by Mr. Mahendran during his tenure there, after the three-member committee had made inquiries and various people gave evidence before that committee or to that committee, they found themselves transferred out from their normal jobs. Now, they haven't been retransferred back. And people are saying that that's anomalous. How do you react to it?
Well, what would happen in the central bank for us is that the transfers of the officers from one department to another is a routine matter. Every 5-year period we have a transfer policy, and all the employees of the central bank are transferred to various departments of the central bank, because it is for their own benefit that the bank is actually giving them a better exposure and a wide experience in all the areas.
Right.
So this particular transfer also would have been done under that particular scheme.
Okay.
If it has been done under that particular scheme, there is no necessity for the bank to retransfer them immediately after the change of the governor.
I love statistics and averages, but I can't imagine that all these people who were transferred out all coincidentally were due for this 5-year internal transfer mechanism. It sounds a bit odd to me.
Yeah, what would happen is that if that had happened in order to penalize those officers, then of course there are trade unions in the central bank, and those trade unions would have raised that matter with the new governor. So we don't have any information about whether the trade unions have raised it.
Right.
So, but of course, if it has happened by way of a punishment to these officers who had given evidence before the lawyers committee, it's a serious matter for central bank's independence, because the employees after that will have a very they get a very bad signal about how they should behave in before a committee that had been appointed by the Prime Minister himself, and because they are supposed to give evidence there, the truth, so that the committee can find the truth out of that. So this is a very bad precedent for the central bank employees.
Indeed. We are told that even recently they were brought up before this Parliament, COPE, and I believe 10 officials were brought in. But also, you know, that I want to ask you this: where is the accountability process? We have a situation where the bribery commissioner has instituted action against a former member of parliament for entering into a contract, which is in Lanka, which is constituted under the Companies Act, and that the allegation is that they signed a contract, an unfair contract, with another private company to make profit to that private company. Now, this is all, the word here, I think the operative word is private. But the central bank is not private, it's public. And so any monies that are lost or anything that happens there is obviously state money, so coming under a different category. And there is a section 70 of the Bribery Act which holds public officials responsible. So in this matter, in the central bank matter, the Auditor General says that we've suffered a loss initially of about 1.5 billion. Now, who's responsible? Can we not get hold of somebody and hold them responsible.
Even though we call this institution central bank for us, it is not the central bank which has been legally instituted in this country. That is called the Monetary Board of the Central Bank of Sri Lanka, which is the legal authority. And if any loss has occurred due to the work of any employee of the central bank, it is the Monetary Board which has to take action. In the first place, because you are correct, when central bank is a public institution and the monies belonging to the central bank are all monies belonging to the nation, and therefore if there is a loss in the central bank, or if the central bank has deliberately caused a loss to the government, it's a loss to the nation. So the first responsibility lies with the Monetary Board of the Central Bank of Sri Lanka.
Right.
And that Monetary Board consists of the Governor of the Central Bank, the Secretary to the Ministry of Finance, and 3 other outside members who have been appointed. So if the loss has happened due to the negligence or some misappropriation of an employee of the central bank, the Monetary Board will have to take immediate action against that employee. This has happened in the past, because I can recall in year 2002, when Mr. S. Jayawardena was the governor, there was loss in the International Operations Department of the central bank due to some traders exceeding their trading limits. What Mr. Jayawardena did was he immediately transferred those employees out. He got an outsider to investigate into that, not even a central bank employee. He got an outside expert to investigate into that, and there was a report, and after the report was submitted to Monetary Board, the governor took action against the employees who had been responsible for the loss that had incurred. So again, you are actually questioning the governance principles being adopted by the Monetary Board of the Central Bank of Sri Lanka.
Yes, but we have a more than an anomalous situation where the governor on the day decides to increase from 1 billion to 10 billion. He actually wanted to take up 20 billion, and thank God for Mrs. Senevi Ratna from the Public Debt Department, who refused to do that. And then he said, oh well, in that case do 10 billion. And later we have him apparently saying that he acted on the instructions of the Prime Minister. But in all this, the Monetary Board wasn't told about it. They were actually only informed after the event, and I don't know whether they actually even formalized it up to now. But what's the point of telling the Monetary Board after an event?
That is why for us I will put the blame wholly on the Monetary Board, because each Monetary Board member in terms of the Monetary Act is supposed to act independently on his own. It's not the Monetary Board members are appointed by the President on the recommendation of the Minister of Finance, but once they have been appointed, they are like Supreme Court judges. They have to act independently, and if they have failed in even questioning what has happened at that particular auction, the Monetary Board members have failed the nation. So first of all, I think it's the Monetary Board which has to take responsibility, because Monetary Board has failed to take action against the officers who are alleged to have committed this particular the loss that the government has incurred as a result of this particular auction.
But we also have, to add to this whole drama, we have various officials still in place. Now we have a senior deputy governor, Mr. Samarasiri, who's I think the chairman of the Treasury Bond Auction Committee. He's still in place. I find that if one is to be whiter than white and to have a real robust investigation, a transparent process, then I don't think it's right that he is still in his position. The governor has not got a new contract. He's flown, but he's flown to perhaps greener pastures as an advisor to the Prime Minister. But leave that aside, be that as it may. During the operational thing, we still have the same people in the same place.
That is why I am blaming the Monetary Board of the Central Bank of Sri Lanka, because because the particular matter which has now come to light, which is now actually not a matter for Sri Lanka, it's a matter that has been even circulated throughout the globe. That such and such scandal has taken place in the Central Bank of Sri Lanka, which is not good for Sri Lanka, which is not good for the Central Bank. So it is the Monetary Board which has to maintain its own Monetary Board which has to maintain its own credibility by conducting a proper investigation for us.
Right.
So it has failed to do that, and because of this reason, I think the whole blame goes to the members of the Monetary Board.
Indeed.
They have failed.
Thank you for that explanation, Mr. Wijewardena. Shortly, we should be going to watch Mr. Bolt, Usain Bolt, in action. But I think this matter at the Central Bank and various other matters that are worrying the people of Sri Lanka have happened at a speed that even Mr. Usain Bolt will be unable to emulate. But whilst we're waiting to join that, I want to continue on this point about how can we hold someone responsible for this, because when people say that a particular company or companies have made X, Y or Z amounts of profit, certainly they may have made that, but they wouldn't have been able to do it on some sort of solo adventure that they undertook. They had to have some help. Somebody somewhere help them. And that, how do we get hold of and make those people somebody somewhere accountable?
One thing for us is already there's an investigation being done by the COP now. So we'll have to wait for the release of the COP report on that. If the COP report mentions the names of certain officials of the Central Bank who have been involved in this particular scandal, then it is up to Parliament to take action against all those officers. That is one area where the public officers can be held accountable, because there had been instances in the past when the COP had named certain officials for irregular practices. The government had immediately removed those officers from their particular positions. So here also, since there's an investigation going on into the particular affair, scandal, by COP, we'll have to wait for the COP report. But apart from that, even before the COP gets into this particular business, once the Monetary Board's name has been tainted by this scandal, it is up to the Monetary Board to have its name cleared by conducting a proper inquiry. So that inquiry, in my view, should be conducted by an outside panel of judges who should be appointed by the Monetary Board, who will act independently, and in order to facilitate now, even in an ordinary disciplinary inquiry in the Central Bank or any other institution, if there's an allegation against a particular officer, what the authority immediately does is that the particular officer is immediately removed from that particular position. So without removing him that particular position, it is not possible for any employee who is working under that officer to give independent evidence before any inquiry. So what I would suggest is that the Monetary Board will have to get into this particular business immediately.
Actually, unfortunately, we thought that we'd be able to we thought we'd be able to join and watch Mr. Bolt in action, but we're now being told that that's not possible. So, sorry, we'll carry on talking about the matters surrounding the surrounding governance. Actually, that's what it is. But Mr. Wijewardena, you know, you've spent a lifetime working at the Central Bank, and I'm sure you have many friends who and colleagues who you're still in touch with, and so on, and people who've retired. In your private moments, and in your private conversations, are you convinced that this matter was, that there was a problem? Or is it just the media reacting?
After leaving the Central Bank, Faraz, I have not been in contact with any of the employees of the Central Bank, but of course
But when you talk to your friends who are with you,
the evidence available in the public domain, that evidence is suggestive that there has been a scandal where the government of Sri Lanka has lost a certain amount of money, which would actually the certain amount of money which would actually would have been earned by the government of Sri Lanka.
Right.
So therefore, it's a matter for the nation to look at it, and if there has been an improper conduct by any officer of any public organization, the nation has a right to take it up with the appropriate authorities. So before that, my suggestion is that the monetary board, which is responsible for the good work as well as the bad work of the central bank, will have to step into the particular matter and conduct an independent inquiry about that. That's what it has to do.
And we also have so many anomalous situations happening all over the place. We have the former governor who was changed or not given another contract, but we see him accompanying the Prime Minister in his delegations abroad on TV. The footage shows him in Singapore, it shows him in Indonesia, and he's here at various fora and so on. It sort of sends the bad or shall we say a not so good vibe to especially people who are coming here in search of investment opportunities. How essential, I know you don't want to comment on that, but how essential is it to give the appearance that our systems are in place and that we enjoy a robust mechanism to attract these people?
It is very essential for us, because at the end what would happen is that people outside Sri Lanka has trust and confidence in the country, not only on the institutions that we have, but also in the individuals who handle those institutions. If there is any suspicion by outsiders that our institutions are weak and we are not in a position to conduct proper inquiries or maintain good governance, then of course what would happen is that people outside Sri Lanka will lose confidence, and as a result we will not be able to harness the best potential which the country has. Because after the change of the government in year 2015, there's a lot of new potential that had come in the way of Sri Lanka, because Sri Lanka had shown to the rest of the world that it can change an authoritarian government by simple ballot of the people of the country. Therefore, there was lots of expectations which the rest of the world had made of Sri Lanka after the presidential election in 2015. Now, this particular respect is now being eroded if Sri Lankan authorities are unable to conduct a proper inquiry into a matter that has become scandalous, and it has tainted the name of the monetary board of the Central Bank of Sri Lanka. And if it is so, it's not a good move for Sri Lanka for us.
Indeed. But what there's another thing, and which I wanted to ask you about, was the EPF,
Employees Provident Fund.
Yes. Now they enjoy the status of a primary dealer, allowing them to deal at that level, at the top level. Under what circumstances would the Employees Provident Fund, under what circumstances would they engage in purchasing or trading in the secondary market?
But they can do trading both in the primary market and the secondary market for us. But what happened was, when the primary dealer system was introduced in 1997, there was a fear that these primary dealers might collusively start manipulating the interest rates to their own benefits. Therefore, in order to moderate their activities and moderate the interest rate structure of the country, the Employees Provident Fund, which is not a primary dealer, was given a seat in the primary auctions of the government securities market. That is because if there is any attempt by any primary dealer, or group of primary dealers jacking up the interest rates for their own benefit, the Employees Provident Fund was supposed to intervene and participate in the primary auctions, so that the Employees Provident Fund can foil those particular collusive activities of the primary dealers.
I see.
So if the Employees Provident Fund has not participated in the primary auctions of any particular treasury bill or treasury bond auction, and if they have purchased those bonds from the secondary market, then it's a question which has to be asked of the Employees Provident Fund, because it's also a matter for investigation by the Monetary Board. Because this particular decision in 1997 was taken by the Monetary Board of the Central Bank, and if the Employees Provident Fund has now failed the Monetary Board, again it is up to the Monetary Board to conduct an inquiry as to find out as to why EPF has failed in participating in the primary auctions of the treasury bonds, and why it has purchased those bonds at the secondary auctions. So it's a matter for the Monetary Board.
Do you see a reason why they would want to?
There can't be any reason, because in my opinion, Employees Provident Fund is a liquid institution, because the cash inflow into the Employees Provident Fund is pretty much higher than the cash outflow. Unlike a commercial bank or any other primary dealer which has to borrow money from outside in order to bid at any particular auction, Employees Provident Fund has enough money. And therefore, even if it doesn't have money, it can always sell some of the treasury bonds or treasury bills it is holding in the secondary market and generate cash. So because of these two reasons, EPF is quite equipped to participate in any particular primary auction without borrowing from outside. So if the Employees Provident Fund has not participated in the primary auctions, again it has to be investigated fully.
And have we had, what are the instances in the past that we can recall where there has been such an investigation by the Monetary Board?
The Monetary Board has, in fact, what has happened is, now I can recall several instances, because as I told you, then when there was this loss in the International Operations Department in year 2002, there was an investigation. Then apart from that, various other matters that pertains to Central Bank of Sri Lanka. If there is even a newspaper article which has criticized the Central Bank of Sri Lanka, the Monetary Board at the subsequent meeting immediately gets the governor to call for a report from the particular department or particular officer regarding the matter that has been discussed in the newspapers. So because the Monetary Board of the Central Bank of Sri Lanka should stand above all other financial institutions of the country, because it is the institution which sets the trends and the good governance principle for other financial institutions for us. So this is where the Monetary Board has failed in its duty.
It's almost shocking, especially to the people who know that there's something was amiss. They may not know the technicalities, but is it fair that political expediency is the primary mover, and so a robust investigation and independent investigation is being compromised because of political expediency?
That's pretty bad, as I told you, Farah, because the whole world is looking at the Central Bank of Sri Lanka in this respect, because the rest of the world believes us because we have an independent central bank, and that independent central bank can function independently, and that independent central bank is managed by people who are top professionals of the country. So if we can give this particular assurance to the rest of the world, then only Sri Lanka can move forward as a nation which can attract investments and which can attract the trust of the rest of the people. So if the political authority fails to notice this, I think it's not good for Sri Lanka. It is pretty bad for Sri Lanka's future.
I have a viewer who is asking this question. In a situation where the Monetary Board is not in a position to initiate investigations due to the chairman of the Monetary Board being under question mark, who should do this function?
Then the government has to do that. Government has to do that because after all, even the matters which the Monetary Board is responsible, finally it is the government which is responsible for. So the government will have to do that. Then I don't know, there has not been an instance so far in Sri Lanka where a member of the public has gone before a court of law and asking the court of law to intervene. So far we know that, but of course under this public interest litigation system that is now very popular throughout the world, in order to compel the public authorities to do what they should do, even a member of public can take the Monetary Board before the court, before the courts of law,
and then hold them accountable.
Hold them accountable, because that is why it is essential that if any particular employee has acted in contravention of his duties, the first investigation should be initiated by the Monetary Board in order to clear its own name. Once it has cleared its own name for us, then of course if it can come before the public and say we have taken action in order to prevent the recurrence of a similar situation in the future. But if the Monetary Board has failed to do that, under the public interest litigation system, a member of the public can take the Monetary Board before courts.
But you know, again, as a person who's worked so long at the central bank, Mr. Wijewardena, isn't it sad when what we are actually talking about is not really about the losses and losses? We are talking about that, but aren't we really the underlying cause that we are all talking about? Isn't it what the founder of the central bank said? Or it's a question of integrity. And you know, he did say that no person whose integrity has been questioned should serve at the central bank.
It is indeed a sad situation for us, because the Central Bank of Sri Lanka for the last say 67 years, for the best part of its period, it has functioned as an institution who was looked up to by the rest of the country as a model institution. And whenever a governor comes before media and says something, the whole country started believing in him. But of course, once a governor has lost the trust and his credibility, no one will believe in what the central bank says. So, because central bank's communication policy is very important. To have an effective communication policy, central bank should be run by people who are up to their job, who will actually do not say something which they do not do. They must always speak the truth, and they must communicate with the public properly. And if the credibility of the central bank has been lost, it's not good for the country, for us. It's not good for the financial system.
I'm tempted to ask you whether there are any such people that you envisage left at the central bank.
Well, of course, it's a matter for the members of the public to decide based on what is taking place in the Central Bank of Sri Lanka to the public.
What a message we bring to you today as from Newsline as we wrap this morning's program up. Integrity, which is, it appears that at the central bank, the events of the last several months, 15 months, it appears that integrity has been bartered not only for political expediency, but for financial benefit of a few at the expense of the very many. Mr. Wijewardena, thank you very much for being on Newsline. We appreciate your presence here. And thank you for watching. Enjoy the rest of the week. We're here Monday to Friday, 7 till 7:30, broadcasting live from Dawson Street only on TV1. Take care, have a great day, and God bless.
Newsfirst Newsline with Faraz Shaukut Ali.